I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we are talking about a riveting book you will not want to put down. It is called A Siren's Call. It is written by Tim B. Wolfe. It is a page turner. In fact, as they say about James Patterson's books, these pages will turn themselves. It's that good. Let's say hello to the author, Tim B. Wolfe. Tim, thank you for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Thanks for having me, Logan.
My pleasure. Love your book. What's your inspiration for this wild tale?
Well, for me, a lot of the inspiration just comes from like a love of history and just like watching movies, thinking like reading those books that really like like try to tell a story while trying to hide stuff, within even just little words here and there of like, and that's like me as a writer, just trying to insert like myself and also like my ideas as I go through. And that's where like I get a lot of this for A Siren's Call, is that there's so much going on, and you really have to think about like someone's like mental mind of like choices that you have to make in life, and like things that like you have a plan going forward, but then when you're almost in that moment, you just you have to make a choice and it can change your life.
Absolutely. For the folks at home who haven't read the book yet,
Mhm.
tell them a little bit what it's about.
Yeah. So basically, you have the main character. Her name is Tess, and basically she is just a criminal mastermind, still young, mind you, but she's just grown up. Like learning the trade with the people around her. And it's not that it's like black or white. It's a very gray zone. Like, who do you steal from? How do you go about doing what you do? And then just they end up, this starts off going through one of their biggest heists ever, and then I would say just bam, betrayal. And it's like, there has to be revenge, there has to be that bloodlust. And then you skip and do like that time skip, and suddenly you actually have actually Paige, which, fun fact for I'm not spoiling too much here, is that actually Paige is a persona of Tess.
Hmm.
So it's actually a whole different, like, as when people go into a con, having that persona that when you just make that simple introduction, so she's almost lying to herself in order to draw people in, like the title, which I really found was like A Siren's Call, is like pulling people in. But then like she's caught between like her, what she tells people and what she tells herself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a wonderful book. Have you thought of this as a movie, perhaps? And if you were to make a movie of it, who would you cast?
Oh gosh. Well, I definitely see whatever I write as movies, because how I like to write is after I read or write a scene or like books that I've read, I always want to envision like my readers closing their eyes and they can see it play out in front of them.
Yeah, it's very visual. I see that in your writing. You create a real good mental image, which is, I think, the fine art of crafting a good novel.
Thank you. As for actors, uh, I mean, for me, I would say that they would. This is, I think it's kind of like entering a new genre of books. It's kind of like young adult, so it's like all the characters are like over 20, but like less than like 35, so a good mid range. So in
Hmm.
terms of like actors, I want like more up and coming, like people who like actors who are like they have like that personality that they can change and morph between characters, because that's something that from my book, is because it is putting on false personas and trying to reinvent yourself. You have to have a very talented actor like being able to change themselves.
I could see like Zoe Kravitz playing this part because she's
I,
got that kind of many faceted personality, you know?
yeah, I could see her very much.
And the other one I could see, she's a little bit older than what you described now, though, is Jennifer Lawrence, just because I guess I like her in everything I see her in.
Yeah, and I think Jennifer Lawrence, like she's really hit her stride on like definitely portraying like the different personas in a lot of what she does. And so, but that's what I like about my story, is that it's not, you don't just have that main character. You also have like her sister, who's also in the criminal world, who also like puts up her own persona. So like you almost have that ability to like get actors together and like playing off each other.
Absolutely. I love this world you created. When you're writing, you kind of become immersed in that world. Do you feel that way, that sometimes you feel bad to leave it, that you want to get back to the keyboard and write more? Tell me a little bit about your writing process, where it transports you, and where you think you're going in the future.
Yeah, like I always like to thank my mom at this point because for me, like I was, I grew up not being able to sleep well. And my mom every time was like, "Well, make a story in your head."
Mm.
And so, over time, just like, okay, well, I have to write it down. And so I would write out generally how I start is like I write like summarized, like little chapters here, little chapters there, and then like just when eventually I come to that end point where I'm like, oh, I can write through this, and I just like sit down, like it's just a one day, like 1 2 day where you just start writing, and just like you just come up with stuff like I like, especially for the first chapter, which for me was just I sat down and I just wrote it.
Right. It's
uh
like you're
but
possessed or inspired, that it's just flowing through you at
yeah,
that point, right? And it feels that way. And the first chapter, of course, is the most important part of any book, because that's what most people read when they go into the bookstore or peruse online.
exactly. And that's something for the readers is they're like, I wrote it all, but it did not even, like half of the situation didn't even exist when I just started writing. It just wrote right through, and I'm like, that is not what I wrote down in the summary of what I should be writing. And I'm like, but I couldn't change it. I was like, this is just really good. And
Yeah.
so after that, I just kept going through with the story.
I'm glad you did. Are you thinking about more chapters for Tess? More adventures, different books?
Not for Tess. What I always like to end my stories on like kind of like, where do they go from here moment.
Mhm.
And in terms of, I like to leave that mystery, like kind of like not create like more and more that they have to deal with, because we're just
Right.
looking at a small fraction of what that, the characters are going through, but it is like that to me, they're that penultimate thing that they're having to deal with, and this is just that one case.
Absolutely. Is there a writer who inspires you? Is there one that you really like, or are you more influenced by film and television?
No, so I definitely would say two great writers for me, especially growing up, were Ian Colfer for the Artemis Fowl series. Just even gave me started on writing and having that fantasy, having that adventure, and then also with Rick Riordan with the Percy Jackson series.
Mhm.
Just
Uh,
like getting into that mindset of each character. Can you having that ability, at least for me, to be able to like change who's speaking in each chapter?
Absolutely. Here's a question that just strikes me now as we speak. Do you think every writer from your generation, on some level, even though it's a different genre, will be influenced by J.K. Rowling? Because I'm sure you've read her books multiple times.
Well, surprisingly, I actually only read her last book for Deathly Hollows for the
Hmm.
final book, and that's just I think for my generation definitely an inspiration, because I mean, I by the time I was even seeing the first book, the first movie was already out,
Right.
and it's just a good roller coaster. But especially with the last book, there was a bit of a little bit of a gap, and I think that was like to help people like to pick up the books and like to really like, oh, how does this end? And I mean, I think they did a really good job with like just going based on what's in the books themselves, which is really
Absolutely. And the
like
ability
where a
to
author
create an
goes.
entirely different world and a
Mhm.
different dimension. I mean, she is definitely inspiring. And like I said, my son's about your age, and he reads those books over and over again, even at your age. So tell me a little bit about your life. You're living in San Diego. What are you doing to keep those wheels spinning as an artist?
So for me, I like to really dig into like historical stuff. So like one story I wrote like had to deal with like kind of like with mafia and like kind of like a gray zone of basically of life, and that really played into this. But I I almost got stuck, for example, going in and just, doing the research, like what does the mafia really mean? What do they do? Seeing like the criminal aspects, like what was the then going over to like Europe and like how it started there and like going, so for me, I really like adding the historical context in like at least even as like a background or even just what I'm making, because that really like it makes me feel like my story has something that's real while still giving it a lot, obviously fiction.
Tell me about when you like to write and where you like to write. Do you write at home? Do you write out in cafes? Do you write on your iPad? Do you write on a computer? Do you write it the old-fashioned way?
So fun fact with me is that actually I find that if I am surrounded by like either relaxing at home or at work or something like that, I can't do it.
Hmm.
But what actually happens is I get to work sometimes a little early. And when you're in, sometimes like when you're in your car or like by yourself, you're like, okay, well, I can't go home to relax. I can't start work. I might as well write. And honestly, that's what I would say for like doing the summary and like even just doing like a lot of the chapters just on my phone or taking out my computer and just typing what comes out and then trying to get it edited, which is always such which is honestly the hardest part for me because I never add quotations for
Yeah.
speaking parts. So it's like, okay, I have to go back. Oh, I don't want to go back.
I know it's rewriting is a big part of writing, and it's the hardest part of writing. It's an essential part of writing. It's the drudgery of writing, but it's all part of it. Well, you have crafted a fantastic world. The name of the book is called A Siren's Call. It is written by Tim B. Wolfe. It is available on Amazon. You can download it to your Kindle, or you can pick up the paperback. It's a terrific read. It is highly recommended. Tim B. Wolfe, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Well, thank you, Logan, for having me.
My pleasure. And to the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.